you have seen it by now, you've heard about it by now, but 12 New York jurors began deliberations this morning for trial against former President Donald Trump following literally hours of closing arguments and instructions from judge and Biden campaign donor, Judge Juan Merchan. And by conflating what a federal crime, okay, we have a federal crime that came forth from a state and local misdemeanor. But in so doing, prosecutor Alvin Bragg is committing a constitutional travesty with the aid of Judge Merchan. So, what can we expect moving forward? And what happens next? I guess a big question if the jury buys in to all of this lawfare. Well, I don't know of anyone who can better help unpack all this for us than my next guest, Tom Fitton. Of course, he's the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
Jody, good to be with you again. Thank you.
All right, so let's begin. Let's just start with catching everyone up on what took place today.
Well, Judge Merchan provided the instructions to the jury. He forced them to sit there for an hour as he read 55 pages or so, it's been reported. He didn't give them a copy of the instructions, and now they're deliberating. One of the key issues today from the instructions is the requirement or the direction by the judge that, in my view, just rigs the deliberations. He suggested that, look, the law requires that you obviously find that the documents were false, the documents showing his payments to Michael Cohen. But the law requires, in order for them to be felonies, essentially, they have to be falsified in furtherance of another crime. And he said, you don't have to agree what that other crime is. 4 of you could think of it, agree on crime A. 4 of you could agree on crime B. 4 of you could agree on crime C. And obviously that's controversial because most Americans understand that there's got to be a general meeting of the minds on a jury in a unanimous way before you convict anyone of a crime that can send them to jail. And the idea that the government hasn't had to provide evidence of anything and the jury can pick and choose one of 3 crimes and have a mix of jurors agreeing with each other in a way that is less than unanimous is just astonishingly, just an astonishing development in a case that I didn't think could get any worse.
So are instructions like this coming from the judge, is this unusual, or does this type of thing happen along the way? And it just seems to me that this is leading up to what potentially could be a conviction, even if the jury is split, even if they can't decide what the crime may have been from what you're describing, there could be a conviction in the midst of a split decision. So is all this normal, or is this way out of the boundaries of norm?
Imagine being a juror, Jody. I mean, you kind of raise the question. To raise the question is to kind of really just highlight the Alice in Wonderland approach here. But I would take even a step further back. The jury shouldn't have this case. There was no evidence.
Right.
There's no evidence of any crimes, so there are non-crimes that he's being prosecuted for. They couldn't even manufacture evidence that he committed any of the fake crimes they alleged. And so in the ordinary course, in my view, the judge should have directed a verdict and ordered that Trump be found or be found innocent or acquitted. And that's not the case here. So the fact that the jury is deliberating, to me, given the paucity of evidence, right, of any criminal activity by Trump, that's just another failure of our justice system. And it shows you how politics has really ruined the justice system up in New York.
Yeah, great. That really is what's going on here. And the ramifications of this, Tom, seem to be far, far reaching. You and Judicial Watch, you all have been on top of this, doing some amazing work, and we thank you for that. But you've obviously been very critical of the judge in this case, accusing him of both abusing civil rights as well as our elections. So this is a political web that abuses civil rights, abuses due process, all sorts of things, but also elections in all this. Tell us what you're referring to here.
Well, the president has a First Amendment right to defend himself, President Trump, and he's been gagged. So Michael Cohen can attack him. Joe Biden's minions can go outside the courthouse and attack him, but he can't attack corrupt prosecutors, and he can't attack and defend himself against Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. And so when he can't speak to this issue that's in the public domain, a major campaign issue, his rights are not only being suppressed, but so are our rights. We have a right to hear from our candidates in a presidential contest. And dare I say it, not only the rights of Trump supporters are being violated, but the rights of Biden supporters are being violated. The rights of all Americans are being violated because they're the ones who are supposed to be able to make a decision based on information. And no one hired, appointed, or elected Judge Merchan to run our presidential campaign. And he's hijacked it. He's gagged Trump. And in effect, he's controlling his campaign on this core issue.
So let me try. I'm trying to wrap my brain around all this. Let me throw into this, and I alluded to this a little while ago, how Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg it really has strained to take a local misdemeanor and turn it into a federal crime. So that in itself is a bizarre twist of things. But if the jury convicts President Trump in all of this, what can we expect? I mean, does this become a new precedent that you can take a misdemeanor and raise it to the level of a federal crime? I mean, what if the jury moves forward this? What does that mean?
Oh, well, under their theory of the law, Jody, every politician who's run for office and took steps to make sure a news story didn't get traction or was suppressed or even elevated has to report such efforts on their campaign finance reports. Otherwise, you're all going to go to jail. So, Jody, just turn yourself in for, any work you did when you were running for office to respond to negative press stories and try to manage them. And every politician in America is facing jail under this analysis of the law, certainly those running for federal office. But to kind of highlight that just shows you that this is not about the law. So in many ways, it's extremely damaging to the rule of law. But, when you ask the New York Democrats, certainly when they tried to, previously you had Judge Aragon fined Trump on nearly $500 million. The governor of New York, to try to take care, to tell businesses, don't worry, we won't come after you. She essentially said, oh, this is just about Trump, don't worry.
Right.
So, I think we've got, the question is this going to be a Rubicon, right? And is this going to result in the regular use of law enforcement personnel and law enforcement powers to jail your political opponents? And that would be the end of America as we know it and the end of our constitutional republic, in effect.
Well, they certainly seem to be pushing in that direction. And a case in point, speaking of witch hunts, while I've got you on the program here, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito just today sent a letter to Congress confirming that he's not going to recuse himself from cases involving President Trump or January 6th. In fact, he believes any reasonable person would conclude that the flag that he's involved in that controversy, that raising a flag does not meet the standard of recusal. So your thoughts on this? This is yet another example, isn't it, of trying to twist the law for political purposes?
Well, he had the sleazy New York Times go and publish photos of his homes where his wife had posted some flags. One was an American flag upside down. The other was an old-fashioned Revolutionary War flag, historic flag, and suggested because some of the wrong people in the New York Times estimation like those flags or use those flags for different political purposes, Alito somehow had to recuse himself from January 6th and Trump cases. It's absurd. They're now literally trying to change the composition of the Supreme Court in key cases because a justice's family flew a flag that some leftist nut job doesn't like. And Alito, in a letter today, said, go jump in a lake, and no reasonable person, not only no reasonable person would require me to recuse myself, but those who would, he suggested, are just clearly trying to change the outcome of Supreme Court cases. So good for Justice Alito in pushing back and defending his rights and his poor wife's rights, because they're smearing his family as well.
Yeah, and where were these people demanding recusal, say, for Judge Merchan, who actually was a political donor to President Biden and now pushing a political, doing the hard work, if you will, in a lot of ways, trying to take down a political opponent? Where was the demand for recusal there? Why and how have we become so one-sided in our judicial system?
Well, most Americans see the judicial system as an area where the law is supposed to rule. You want disinterested judges. You want the fair administration of justice. For the left, everything is politics, and it's all power politics. So the judicial system is not immune to their craven politics. So Judge Merchan obviously jails their political opponents, and so he gets a pass. Justice Alito, he's going to rule the wrong way. Justice Thomas is going to rule the wrong way as far as the left is concerned. So they're going to be smeared, and they're going to try to rig the Supreme Court by knocking them off cases or undermine the Supreme Court generally by false allegations of misconduct against conservative justices. So this is all power politics, and Americans need to reject the left's efforts to politicize the courts in such a dangerous way.
Yeah, because, I mean, you come back full circle with what you just said, and you have to connect the dot and honestly ask, when did flying an appeal to heaven flag, when did that become a crime? I mean, Justice Alito, how is that considered a crime? And what you just said is it's not about the law any longer. It's about a political agenda and pushing forward the agenda. So it does not matter if the law has been broken. If it's advancing a political agenda, you overlook the law. On the flip side, if you fly a flag and we can make it look like it's a violation of the law, then we're coming after you. Is that more or less what you're saying here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the left thinks the American flag is controversial. Of course, they're going to think a Revolutionary War flag is controversial. Well, at the same time, flying, one of the buildings near our offices, Health and Human Services headquarters, a month or two ago, had a transgender flag flying. You're not dealing with folks who think they're going to be held to any standard or feel a desire to be held to any standard. It's what they can get away with. And they have a media that helps, cultural institutions and political institutions that provide them cover. And it's up to Americans like Judicial Watch and Family Research Council and others to kind of push back. And I tell you, because the wall is thin, and it's like the thin line between the rule of law and the left-wing chaos and revolution.
So let me ask you, Thomas, we've just got a couple of minutes left, but are we going to get back to Lady Justice being blindfolded, or have we crossed the line to where the judicial branch now has become a political arm of, in this case, the left, but whatever majority party happens to be dominating at any given time? Is there a way to get back to equal justice under the law?
Well, I think it applies in certain circumstances and still works in courts across America, even at the federal level. But the left is focused on undermining the rule of law by trying to jail their political opponents, which is exceedingly dangerous and can undermine the general trust Americans have in the judicial system. And of course, the Supreme Court is uniquely immune because of our U.S. Constitution and the powers given to the Supreme Court under the Constitution. Remember, the judicial function resides in the Supreme Court. And so that's why the left is hyper-focused on that, because the Supreme Court's been issuing rulings defending life, opposing race-based discrimination, woke discrimination, defending the rule of law in ways the left objects to. And so they will destroy anything that gets in their way. But it's still a powerful institution under our Constitution. So they still have significant challenges to completely destroy it. But it doesn't mean we can't be, it doesn't mean we can be any less vigilant and relentless in defending the rule of law against their attacks, because they're never going to stop. We just have to be vigilant 24/7.
Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, I can't thank you enough for all the incredible work that you and Judicial Watch do. Thank you so much for joining us today on Washington Watch and for giving us your expertise on all of this.
Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it.